Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting round of and new MMA show. I'm your host, Michael Hansen, and I do all kinds of stupendous things with microphones because I'm a ring announcer, and I'm an under-the-weather announcer today. But I'm sticking it out for you folks, for the fans of the show, for those who have been with us from the beginning. And I'm joined this week, as I always am, by my two co-hosts who bring MMA punditry to new heights. Introducing to you first from New York, Mark Prio. What's up, buddy?
Nothing, just picking little tiny pieces of fuzz off my microphone.
Dude, hey, you take care of your equipment, and your equipment will take care of you.
Okay, I like that. But yeah, we almost had a two-man show tonight. Mike tried to bail on you guys. We had to guilt trip him. He finally caved, and here we are. But I think the main reason was that we're doing this bantamweight special tonight, like we did the flyweights for you guys last week. We're doing a bantamweight top 10, and we realized that the next off week, where there was not both a show to recap and a show to preview, was in like September. So we were like, you know what, maybe let's get this bantamweight thing done since we will have no time for months.
That's crazy to think about, that they are booked until September. This is mainly the UFC, right?
I don't remember if it was UFC on every single weekend. Like there might have been one weekend where it was like PFL and Bellator or some shit. But when I looked, every single weekend had events until September or something or other that I forget. First week of September, I think.
Okay. Okay, and now introducing to you from Florida, the Sunshine State, he is the Nicaraguan Nightmare, Omar Artola. What's up, bud?
What's going on? I have had a very slow week of training, and it's made me really sad.
What do you mean by slow?
Memorial Day killed me. There was no training. And then my job still thinks that it's fucking cool to have meetings at 9 o'clock in the morning for like 30 minutes. So that kills my whole goddamn morning at the gym. So I can't go to my 8 a.m. class or my 9 a.m. class in the morning. So, boo.
So we have an exciting episode. This is a lower energy episode. This is already this is a low key episode. But it's going to be fun. We're going to talk about some fights that are coming up this weekend, and we're going to get into our top 10 all-time bantamweights. And that might pick up the energy, boys. That might pick it up a little bit.
I'm feeling the energy. I think you just might be the only sick loser.
Probably. You know what? I apologize. I should not project my flu-ish symptoms onto the show and onto our audience.
I just had to battle my 3-year-old to get to sleep, and I tried a new tactic, and I was victorious, so I'm feeling ultra pumped up.
Chokeholds will do that, bro. Those are pretty successful, you know?
Freaking go to sleep.
Sleep.
Okay. That was me. I won't bore the audience. I'll just say that was me during dinner tonight with my 2-year-old, freaking trying so many things to get this kid to fucking eat.
Oh, yeah.
Dads out here choking their kids left and right.
Yeah. Okay. I have a big show next weekend. I'll probably talk about it next week's show, but
Nice.
I don't know if I mentioned it yet, but at the next Anthony Pettis card, which is next Sunday, so a week and a half away, there's going to be a special guest at this show, and that is one Mr. John Bones Jones.
You did mention, but you can mention that as often as you would like, because it's fucking awesome.
It's surreal. It is surreal, and it's gonna be awesome. I guess he's flying out to Milwaukee, and he's gonna be front row special guest. I think they've called him the host for the evening, which is interesting and very cool. So
Have you told a lot of people
who know, people who understand what that means.
Yeah, because that's what I was gonna say. Like I feel like most people would not get that you're like literally going to introduce and like announce the Michael Jordan of MMA.
I've said that. I mean, I said that to my wife to let her grasp what this means to me.
Yeah.
At the very
Normal
least.
people like, oh my God, good for you.
Right. this man named Jonathan Jones.
And me and Mark are like, oh my God.
Anyway, but before the Sunday, I have a show in New York on Friday, Warriors Cup 53, Road to 1, doing some big things there, announcing some belts. I believe it is the semifinal fights for the Road to 1 tournament. The winner, culminating with the winner winning a six-figure contract with Muay Thai Division of 1 championship. Going to be very cool later this year. So that's it. Okay.
Wait, Mike, are you doing the June? What date did you say? June 17th?
No, June. It's next weekend. It's June 9th.
Oh, I don't think Chase is on that card.
9th and 11th. Sunday's the 11th is the APFC.
Word. Okay.
I hope that's right because I booked my flights. Anyway. And then a month later, it's July, whatever number you just said. I think it's July. July, like 16th, is the next Warriors Cup with 3 Pillar Promotions.
I wonder if that's the one that Chase is going to be on. I'm not sure.
Could be. Mark, you have to go to a freaking Warriors Cup again.
I was going to say, I went to one, motherfucker.
But you went to one in...
You ended the sentence with again, and now I'm caught.
Yes. You haven't been to the one at the new venue that they're at. It's pretty cool.
What's
anyway,
the new venue?
It's the Melrose Ballroom in Queens. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I should. June 9th? Let's look right now.
June
what I
9th.
have on June 9th. And then we'll start this fucking show for you people who are waiting. My June 9th looks quite empty at the moment. Maybe we can work that out.
Boom.
Cool. Let's begin. And there is no name on the marquee. The name on the marquee is whoever is going to be the consensus number 1 all-time bantamweight. So let's begin.
If we don't have a consensus number 1, then somebody here is fucked up in the head.
It's true. It's true. I'm excited for bantamweight because I feel like the top 5s are going to be very similar, and then I feel like the bottom 5s are going to be all over the fucking map.
I think it's even more the top 4. I even think 5 might get a little weird between the 3 of us. I'm interested to see where this list is because bantamweight had a lot of early greats that I just can't put on my top 10 that I would love to have an infinite list of honorable mentions because the bantamweight division was built on a lot of guys that I think today wouldn't be able to kind of stand in the fire, but without them we would be nowhere.
True.
But yeah,
are we already within the bantamweight clip here?
I know, right? I just kind of jumped in full steam
I don't want to
here.
give too many thoughts, but if this is part of the clip, then I will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt sort of similar. I'll be surprised if the guys that are in my top 7, I'm expecting to be on all of your lists. If not, I'll be surprised. But my take, I feel like, is that beyond about 7 guys, that I could wake up any given day and rank 8 through 20 in any order, depending on how I felt. Mm-hmm. I feel like this division, even including those top guys, everyone had wins over everyone. Everyone had lost to a random guy. It was so convoluted. Plus, this division has way more history, like Omar said, than flyweight that we've done before and women's MMA that we've done before. I guess it's only going to get harder as we go. But yeah, this one was hard.
It really came down for me about belts and title defenses and, also performances to a certain extent. But it got hairy, man, especially with how some of these guys were on the top of the world. And it's not just one guy. Some of these guys were on the top of the world. And then all of a sudden they just jumped off the edge of the world. Full fucking Bryce Mitchell just dipped his ass right off. And it's kind of crazy to see, having gone through a lot of these records, how some of these guys had streaks that were unbeaten for years, a decade almost, and then they can't win now to save their life. So it's crazy to try to rank them as all-time great when they're kind of not great right now. So that was another difficulty I had in this list.
Yeah, man.
I'm very intrigued. All right, let's get into this thing.
Hundo.
So we do honorables first?
Yeah, Mark, why don't you start us off with some honorable mentions?
Okay, so I have two actual honorables, but I'm going to quickly say like some groups of people that, because like I said, I feel like there was like 20 guys you could consider here. I feel like the current crop of Bellator bantamweights in Sergio Pettis, Horiguchi, Patchy Mix, Ralphion Stotts, Juan Archuleta, I feel like all those dudes have very solid resumes that, if they are added to, could end up in this list one day, especially the younger guys like Apache Mix. There were guys in the UFC like Marab and Sean O'Malley, who I feel like already have great resumes, but they weren't quite there yet where I could consider them for an all-time list. And then there was the older guard of guys like Bibiano Fernandez, Norifumi Yamamoto, who I fucking loved back in the day, Michael McDonald, Masakatsu Ueda.
Yeah.
All those guys have huge resumes too. And then my last few inclusions, or disclusions, opposite of inclusion, exclusion, thank you, dumbass. My last few exclusions from my like honorables, I tried to keep it to two, just an 11 and a 12 basically, were the trio of Marlon Moraes, and I'm sure some of these names are going to be in your guys' list, Marlon Moraes, John Lineker, Rafael Assunção. They all had so many wins and losses. I found it so hard to rank them. These are like the guys I was talking about where I was like, I feel like I could wake up a different day and be like, he's got to be number 10. But they all just missed my list, that trio, but they're all fucking awesome. So getting into my actual official honorables, I guess this would be my number 12. Corey Sandhagen.
Ooh.
I fully understand
Good
that
for
Corey
him.
Sandhagen may not feel like he is as legendary of a name as a bunch of those guys that I just mentioned. He's a little bit younger in the game still, but I really do feel like he's already knocking on the door of the top 10. Not only has he beaten Shido Vera, Song Yadong, Frankie Edgar, Marlon Moraes, Rafael Assunção, and John Lineker, so all three of the names I just said, he's beat them all. But it's his losses for me that put him here. Aside from a very early career loss to Jamal Emmers pre-UFC, he's only been beaten by three people, and it's TJ Dillashaw in a fight he arguably won, Petr Yan, and Aljamain Sterling. So that is a pretty damn good resume to me, and one that is still growing. So he snuck into my honorables as I guess what would be 12. And then the man who just missed my top 10. There are only 7 guys who have ever held the UFC Bantamweight title, and one of them did not make my top 10, and that is Cody Garbrandt. He had one of the most electrifying, memorable title wins you will ever see in your life. He toyed with Dominic Cruz, who is many people's bantamweight GOAT. We'll see if he's our bantamweight GOAT shortly. He took the title from him when no one else could, and I will never forget it. But the rest of his resume is kind of nothing. Like, yes, he also knocked out Rafael Assunção. That's like his one other, respectable victory. But TJ finished him twice. Munoz finished him. Car France finished him. Font beat him. It's just like not even close to a resume that would have him sniffing this list, if not for the one single win, which of course is a UFC title over Dominic Cruz. It's huge, and I get that. But I don't think I'm underrating it because he's my number 11 guy, and without that win, he's probably like number 40. So he didn't make my 10. He's certainly been a story of a bit of wasted potential and a bit of a bad chin, and he comes just outside for me.
Okay. Omar, any honorables?
Yeah. So my first honorable, and I guess I'll go from bottom to top as far as that part is concerned. My first one was actually Miguel Torres. I don't think he's going to come up in a ton of lists. I don't even know if a ton of guys really know Miguel Torres, but Miguel Torres was a real name, especially back in the WEC, and then more so once the WEC kind of got folded into the UFC afterwards. But he was one of those guys that I remember loving watching fighting very early on in my MMA watching experience. Very tall, lanky dude, won a ton of fights, especially during that time frame. Played with him in the UFC games as well, just because of how much I liked his stand-up and even his submission game. And I don't know if a lot of people are going to give him a lot of credit, obviously, because he is one of the more OG guys. And like we talked about, the level of technique and the growth in the bantamweight division has been pretty exponential over the last decade. So a lot of the guys that were big back in 2009, 2011, 12, all that kind of stuff, I mean, a lot of those guys, I don't know if they'd be able to stand in the fire with some of the guys that are still around today, which is why, not to get into it too much, but which is why somebody like Dominic Cruz really stands out in a lot of these lists, because this man has been through, I don't even know how many eras at this point of MMA. So, so yeah, that's my first honorable mention is Miguel Torres. My second honorable mention is Rafael Assunção. Rafael Assunção is another one of those guys. I think we talked about Benavidez last week. You know, just one of these guys that was always at the top of the division that never really got a title shot. And then now towards the later half of his career, you know, that latter position keeps declining slowly, and he hasn't really picked up any kind of momentum in a little bit. So, you know, he's a guy that I have a problem not mentioning him when we talk about bantamweights. So I wanted to make sure that we put him in at the very least during our honorable mentions. My second one is Marlon Moraes. And Marlon Moraes is one of those guys that came in with a lot of hype. Had done a lot of work in World Series of Fighting, which is now the PFL. Fought a lot of great guys, had a lot of good success in that time. When he came into the UFC, he had a lot of good early success, and then he started to fall off a little bit towards the later half now of his career. But again, he made such an impact in a division that was kind of searching for real talent at the time that he came in. And he made a real splash at the time, and although he wasn't able to keep up his momentum, he's definitely somebody that you can't talk about the bantamweight division without mentioning Marlon Moraes.
KO'd Aljo, man. He can say it forever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We can argue left and right whether he meant to throw it as a kick or a knee, but that really just doesn't matter in the end. Just doesn't matter.
Yeah. Just doesn't matter. That's right.
And then, actually, I think I got this a little. I also have Cody Garbrandt on my list as well.
Oh, wow.
I did have him on my honorable mentions list. I had him below Marlon Moraes and Rafael Assunção, which is a little odd because Cody Garbrandt is the only one out of this list who does have gold. But like to Mark's credit, and I won't go through a lot because a lot of it is kind of the same reasons that I put him on this list. He had a legendary performance, something that no one can ever take away from him. It's one of the greatest things we have ever seen. One of the greatest things I've ever seen live. Not in person, but in the moment, I guess. And then he never, it was almost like somebody who dropped a platinum record, right? One of the greatest hits of all time. We could play it for the next 25, 30 years and it's still going to bop. And the kid can't make another song to save his life. And I feel like that's Cody Garbrandt, is our one-hit wonder in that situation. And again, you know, we can talk about the Rafael Assunção one. I've never been high on that performance personally. I think he went for a Hail Mary with that punch, and he caught it. You know, good for him. I'm glad he won, whatever. But I don't think that technique works on a majority of people. I think Rafael Assunção got a little wild towards the end of that round, and Cody caught him. But regardless, Cody is still a guy that made a splash in the division. He beat Dominic Cruz in ways that no one has been able to really do to Dominic Cruz since then. Chito was able to catch him. You know, we've seen Dominic Cruz get caught, but Dominic Cruz has basically been winning every fight that he's won, that he's been fighting since then, and winning. You know, whether he gets caught or not at a certain point, he's generally winning those fights as well. So I have Cody Garbrandt on that list for that reason. And my last one is Cody Sandhagen. Cody Sandhagen is one of these guys Corey, sorry. Okay. Corey Sandhagen's one of these guys that is, like Mark said, kind of young in the division, but has made a significant impact in it already. He's fought a lot of the biggest guys in the division, has looked great doing it, has had some losses, and a lot of times those losses are to wrestlers, and they're smothering and kind of his inability to get back up or gain control once he's kind of put in a disadvantageous position. So, you know, he's not at the top right now, but he's beaten so many guys, and the trajectory for him, I think, is just going upwards even now. So while he might not be on our list right now in the top 10, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe in a couple of years, 3 years, something like that, that changes. So those are my honorable mentions for now. I think that was like 5.
I don't feel bad for saying a lot of names because you wanted to say a lot of names as well.
That's okay. I will say a few.
Shows you how hard it was.
Dude, respect for the Sandhagen picking the honorables. I did not think of that. I just feel like he hasn't accomplished that much yet, but God, he's so good.
Bro, he killed Frankie Edgar. I mean,
he did, man. He did.
If there's nothing to at least make you look at that resume a little bit closer, it's flying kneeing Frankie Edgar in the goddamn Shadow Realm.
Yep.
It was really
Yeah, man.
when I not to cut you off, Mike, but it was really
That's
when
all
I
good.
had Maurice, Sunsao, and Lineker all written down, and they were like just missing my list, and then I realized he beat all three of them. I was like, huh, like why is Corey Sandhagen not higher on my list?
Yeah, Lineker was
Yeah.
one that I don't think I really considered just because of, he's a worker for sure, but I feel like the strength of resume left just a smidge to be wanting,
Yeah, he beat a lot of dudes, man. But anyway, Mike, sorry, we're cutting you off. Go for it.
No, it's okay. My honorable mentions slash shout outs. We'll start out with Brian Bowles. I don't know if you guys remember him. From
Oh, yeah, dude.
WEC
Oh,
days.
dude, did I not say his name? Because I super meant to say his name. Yeah,
Brian Bowles.
I didn't write it on my little list.
Bro, there, I'm
I meant
telling
to
you,
have
dude,
him in the
there's.
old guard section.
See, that's the thing, right? Is
Yeah.
like I mean, we're talking like I don't want to fuck up your list either, but there's guys like Brad Pickett and all kinds of shit that like
Totally right.
like I want to talk about, but we'll be here for fucking hours. Like we're talking
Yeah.
about mountains of guys that were such an impact in bantamweight that there's no way we can go through them all.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wasn't gonna break. I was just gonna say him when I said the older guys. I wasn't gonna
Yeah,
break
yeah.
him down as one of my main ones.
No, it's all good.
There's so many guys, man, so many.
Brian Bowles is one of the WEC OG bantamweight greats. A very short resume, very short record. He finished his career only 10-3 professional, and but he has wins over the likes of Miguel Torres. He fought Dominic Cruz and lost. He fought Faber and lost. But at one point, he looked like he was the future of 135 pounds in MMA.
And the Cruz loss was he broke his hand and they had
Yeah.
to stop the fight.
Yep.
And he never got another shot at him.
And then came the WEC got bought out by the UFC. I believe Brian Bowles popped. He was like one of the earlier guys who was like really good and popped for steroids.
right.
Steroid use.
Damn, he popped when USADA wasn't even a thing. That's no good, man.
Yeah.
That's no good.
Also, shout out slash honorable mention for Jimmy Rivera, who looked like a juggernaut at 135 for many years. He won belts for smaller promotions, but unfortunately never mounted a run to all the way to a title shot in the UFC. But he has wins over John Dodson, Uriah Faber, and Pedro Munoz. I'm going to give a little shout out. This is sort of a mini one to Joe Benavidez, who, even though he was on most of our lists for 125 pounds, he did fight a portion of his career at 135 pounds, and he was also a killer there as well. And I'm going to round out my honorable mentions with also mentioning Marlon Moraes, who he would have been higher on my list, but I feel like the last part of his career, there was just a lot of losing. But at one point, it's like, damn, this guy's so good. But he became the World Series of Fighting champ before they were PFL, obviously, with 5 title defenses there. He beat Miguel Torres. He has a win over Aljamain Sterling, as we mentioned. And he has a win over Aldo. So, obviously, it's a different weight class. But, if things didn't take such a sort of a dip in the later half of his career, he definitely would have been much further up this list. But that being said, why don't you guys pick it up with your top 10 through 6?
Who wants to begin?
I'll go first.
Go for it.
Do it.
My number 10 is the California Kid, Uriah Faber. Uriah Faber, for me, was one of these guys that I think is instrumental not only in the history of the 135-pound division, but also kind of setting a legacy for what the 135-pound division is still now. That man has fought for belt after belt after belt, has fought so many of the top guys, had such great technique, became a staple and a household name, not only for WEC, but even still in the UFC kind of earlier on, once they folded things in. I think the real issue why Uriah Faber is on this part of my list is because I don't believe he's ever won a belt at 135. Every time he fights Cruz in the UFC, is not working out. Right, we know that he beat Cruz the first time when Cruz was very, very young, still had that dumbass haircut, and he got choked out and won the belt And then from that point on, Uriah Faber's, in that career setting, right, when we talk about belts and that kind of success, his trajectory started to go down while Cruz started to go up. And when Cruz kind of became that guy in 135, especially once we folded into the UFC, Cruz was the guy that didn't lose. Cruz was the 135-pound division at that point. And Uriah Faber was one of those guys that was constantly there, constantly beating other guys and getting, especially because of his popularity, I would say, and his people knowing who he is. I think he got a lot more title shots than most people would get. But Uriah Faber is a household name, man. It's very difficult to think about 135 and not include Uriah Faber somewhere on your list. So he's my number 10. My number 9 is the Piotr Jan. Ooh. Piotr Jan is relatively young in the 135-pound UFC division. His skills, though, are disgustingly visible. Like, you can't deny how talented this man is and how good he is. He has won UFC gold, and I think that was one of the things that pushed him over into my list. And he's also knocked the holy hell out of Uriah Faber, which is why he also stands above Uriah Faber, in my opinion. I think technically, he's just a better fighter. And on top of that, he's won the belt. The reason why he's this low on my list as far as, success is concerned is because once he's won the belt, things start to go a little awry, as things tend to do once you start staying at the top of the division. And obviously we have the Aljo knee, and then we have the Marab loss, and we have a couple of other, inconsistencies, the Aljo rematch that he lost. So Piotr Jan is still young, still has, I think, time in the UFC. I think the wrestling is going to be a big obstacle, especially with guys in that division currently. But he is super talented, and he has been relatively successful in the UFC so far. And again, has become one of those guys that I think people have to talk about when they talk about 135. So Piotr Jan at my number 9. Number 8, and this is where I'm interested to see where everybody has certain names here. But my number 8 is the Kyoji Haraguchi, the great Kyoji Haraguchi. I didn't put him on my 125 list. I talked about how Sergio and Kyoji are two guys that, while very successful currently, especially now, and they have wins at 125, their real impact and I think their real success has been at 135 in these other divisions. Bless you. Kyoji Haraguchi is a guy that made a real impact, I think, in the UFC earlier on, especially when it came to the Asian market. Demetrius Johnson was the guy who was really only the one to put him away. Kyoji Haraguchi is not one of those guys that loses very easily or loses almost at all. And I think especially now that, he's going back down to 125, we might not see him at 135 anymore, but he's done so much work in this division, especially in other big organizations, not regional organizations, that it's difficult for me to deny, again, based on his resume as well as his actual talent, his spot in my top 10. Mm-hmm. And just above Kyoji Haraguchi at number 7 is Sergio Pettis. Sergio Pettis, for a lot of the reasons I talked about with Kyoji Haraguchi, is why I also have Sergio Pettis on my list. His impact at 135, I think, especially in the Bellator division, I think has been quite significant. Has done a lot of great work there. Beat Kyoji Haraguchi in a spectacular fight and finish. And I think his success, his trajectory is in such good standing that it's difficult for me not to, combine his overall success, not only the 125-pound division, just winning in general, but also the impact that he's actually made as a champion at 135 in the Bellator division. So Sergio is at my number 6.
7.
Right.
7. So now tell us number 6.
And now number 6. Number 6 for me is Triple C, Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo, a lot of people might not know this. I don't really know. But Henry Cejudo fought 3 times at bantamweight. And in those 3 times, and I should have pulled it up beforehand so I had the damn names ready to go. But Henry Cejudo has fought 3 times at bantamweight. Of those 3 times, he fought Marlon Moraes, Dominic Cruz, and Aljamain Sterling. And while he lost to Aljamain Sterling recently in a title fight, I think we can all kind of talk about how competitive that fight was in the beginning. But he did knock out Dominic Cruz to defend the UFC Bantamweight Championship. And he won the Bantamweight Championship from Marlon Moraes in a vacant fight for the belt. Knocked out Marlon Moraes, knocked out Dominic Cruz, and then went on his little retirement, and then eventually came back to fight Aljamain Sterling. Cejudo is one of those guys that it's difficult to ignore his resume. He hasn't been fighting MMA very, very long. He doesn't have a ton of fights like a lot of the guys that are in these divisions, but the fights that he has are against the elite, and he has a lot of success beating a lot of these guys and beating them in impressive fashion. I think the fact that he's won belts in bantamweight and also defended the belt in bantamweight, which is something not a lot of people do after you get past Dominic Cruz, I think it's difficult to not rank him as high as I did. So my Henry Cejudo is my number 6.
Nice.
I just have a question for you. Are you 100% sure you have 5 guys left on your list?
Yeah. Yep.
Why?
Okay. I got concerned that you jumped someone by accident because I can't figure out who your number 5 is going to be. I cannot wait till we come back to you.
Yeah.
Just let me be excited.
All right. Mark, do you want to go or you want me to hop in?
Whoever. What do you want to do?
I'll go.
All right.
Okay. I feel like in some ways I gave more weight to like accolades and championships, and in other senses I gave more weight to just like, I don't know, just popularity and like one of the trailblazers. So my number 10 guy who snuck on to my number 10 spot is Miguel Torres. Miguel Torres is an OG of bantamweight. He was a WEC legend. The guy at one point in his career as a professional was like 35-1 or 37-1. He rattled off a 17-fight win streak at one point, snapped by Brian Bowles, by the way. He won the WEC belt, of course. He had 3 title defenses there, and his best win was probably over Mizugaki, which is a nice win, but he got it to UFC eventually after the merger. Things were a little more rocky for him at that point, but major points. He was one of the guys who, when I was just getting into MMA many years ago and would tune into WEC fights with that signature royal blue mat, he's like one of the guys who was like, dude, this guy is fucking no joke. And so that's why Miguel Torres, I gave him the number 10 spot on my all-time greatest 35ers.
Not to mention that hair. I forgot to talk about that hair.
That's right, man. That's
fucking
right.
That Miguel Torres, what is it, a mohawk mullet thing?
It's like a mullet, yeah.
Yeah, wild shit.
The next guy on my list at number 9, he has been a stalwart of bantamweight for quite a long time. That is Rafael Assunção. At one point, he had a 12-fight win streak in the UFC. His only loss was a decision loss to TJ, I believe. And in that span, in that win streak, he beat TJ once. He beat Aljamain Sterling. He beat Rob Font. He beat Marlon Moraes, and he beat Pedro Munoz. And it kills me sometimes to think that he never, when you put that in perspective, the fact that he never got to the title, at least never got to a title fight, is a shame for him. He probably won't at this point.
He retired, so he definitely won't.
Right. My next guy at number 8. This was a tough one. It's like he's got a little bit of the accolades, but lately, I mean, now he's been in the win column, but, you know, since he lost the belt, that being Cody No Love Garbrandt, I gave him the number 8 spot, especially because he knocked Rafael Assunção into Jupiter. And that being said, I mean, look, the latter half of his career has not been going amazingly, but he has that monstrous win over Dominic Cruz, which I give major points to. Cody Garbrandt looked inspired. He was unconscious that fight in the good sense. So I give him major points for that win alone, as well as the run he made up to that fight. He also had a win over the, at the time, undefeated Almeida, and a decent win over Mitsugaki. Since then, it hasn't been the best resume, but when he was hot, man, he was white hot. So I gave Cody Garbrandt the spot. And I gave him the spot over Assunção because it would have been weird having Assunção over him. Okay, my number 7 is as well Triple C Henry Cejudo. He wasn't your 7. He was your 6.
Yes, he was a 6. Yes.
Correct.
He doesn't have the biggest resume. This is where things get hairy at 135. Yep. He doesn't have the biggest resume at 35, obviously. But he has, I think, 3 wins, 3 victories at 135 pounds. But he has a title win, 2 title wins, that's right.
2 victories.
Two victories at Bantam.
Yeah.
Only 2 victories? Not 3?
Yeah, his last one was Aljo.
TJ was at flyweight.
Oh, okay.
But, I mean, obviously he beat a great bantamweight, so factor it in.
Yes. But he's Henry Cejudo, man. He's one of like the fucking mystics of the sport. I will say this about Cejudo, kind of a little bit of a tangent. I would love to see that guy do color commentary for the UFC. I think he has done color for like CFFC or LFA or some a more regional promotion. I think he would be. I think he could be brilliant as an analyst or as color.
Bro, let's get fucking Henry Cejudo and Dominic Cruz on the desk together. let's get. You want to talk about the fucking the cinnamon, the shit that'll, if you ingest it by itself, will kill you. This Henry Cejudo is just gonna be a nice warm cup of hot chocolate, just making all kinds of shit delicious in there with the 2 of them going back and forth. I can only imagine. Dominic Cruz so bare, and then Henry Cejudo. Yeah, man. Yeah, no, I totally see it. Yeah, Dominic, I totally see it. I would love it. There's nothing I would love more.
So yeah, just to sum up, he obviously has the win over one of the bantamweight greats in TJ, even though that was at 125 because TJ attempted to go down. He won the belt in a fight against Moraes, and then he defended it against Cruz and finished Cruz, as we've pointed out. So that right there, again, two greats right there. 3 greats if you're counting Moraes. So that's why I gave him the spot. Okay, my number 6, I gave it to Uriah Faber. I gave Faber a ton of points. He has to be on everybody's list. I don't want to see Faber in anybody's honorables. Even though Faber doesn't have the UFC gold, he's just such an influential guy. Again, going back to the WEC days, the California kid, man. Even though he also had a lot of fights at 145, but I'm putting him here on my list for greatest bantamweights. He was an influencer, to coin a phrase, in the sport, and very influential at 135 pounds. Great career. Nothing to scoff at. Okay, Mark, take it away.
Okie doke. All right, starting my list off at number 10 is wait, did you have? Oh no, okay, sorry. Is Petr Yan. He, of course, is the man who many people thought was going to reign as the next longtime bantamweight king for a second there, and instead he never even defended the belt and has now lost 3 in a row. But to dive a little deeper, yes, he has 4 UFC losses. Of course, one of them is the DQ to Aljo in a fight that he was winning. The most recent one is the one that maybe does hurt the all-time resume a little bit in that he got beat very clearly by Merab. But the other 2, as we know, were pretty controversial. They were hotly contested fights against Aljo the second time and Sean O'Malley. Personally, I did score them both against him, but I do acknowledge that there are a lot of people that saw it the other way, especially in the O'Malley fight. And 2 competitive losses and a clear loss to Merab were not enough to make me leave him out of the top 10 when he had this run. He beat John Dodson. He beat Jimmy Rivera. He KO'd Uriah Faber. He TKO'd Jose Aldo. And he beat Corey Sandhagen. That's a savage fucking run. So I think that stretch, along with the fact that he was both a UFC world champion and UFC interim champion, were enough to get him into my top 10 over guys like Agar Brand, who I decided to leave off. 9 and 8, I got, I guess, what you could call a little cute. I was happy to hear Mike mention Joe Benavidez because he made my list.
Woo!
He is number 9 for me. Obviously, he is much more recognized as a flyweight. I had him number 4 on my flyweight list last week. But he finds his way onto my bantamweight list now. And I won't talk so much about him because I broke him down in depth last week. If you want to hear that, go back and click on our flyweight rankings. But to put it simply, the man had plenty of fights at bantamweight early in his career. and he beat guys like Jeff Curran, Eddie Wineland, who's another name that we haven't said, and Miguel Torres, who I have not yet gotten to on my list, and Joe B has a win over him. Dominic Cruz was the only guy to beat him during his run there. He then beat Henry Cejudo later in his career, who's going to be higher up on my list as well. So I had a hard time leaving him off. I felt like his resume, when you factor it all in, again, ends up being stronger than someone like a Cody Garbrandt, despite the title win. And then number 8, same exact reason, same exact premise, Demetrius Johnson. I obviously talked about him last week as well. He was all of our number 1 flyweight, of course. But he's another guy who spent the early part of his career at bantamweight. He's another guy who beat Miguel Torres, which shows you how high level he was. And on top of that, he has wins over plenty of guys with bantamweight credentials, such as Henry Cejudo, John Dotson, Kyoji Horiguchi, Joe B twice, who I just talked about, Norifumi Yamamoto, who I mentioned earlier as a guy that I love. So 2 guys in a row on my list who you may not think of as bantamweights, but when I looked at resumes as a whole, I just felt like they had done enough at bantamweight and had such a strong resume that it was easier for me to give them a top 10 inclusion than to give guys in my honorables like a Sandhagen or a Garbrandt. So that was my thought process there. I know some people may not be super huge fans of that, but Joe B and DJ make my list at 9 and 8. Number 7, Triple C, Henry Cejudo. Obviously, he was behind DJ in my flyweight ranks, and rightfully so, but when it comes to bantamweight, he does deserve to be ahead. As Mike mentioned, and Omar as well, it's not a huge bantamweight resume for Henry Cejudo. It's actually only 3 fights that he's had at that weight, and he's 2-1 in those fights. But it's really the names that he has beaten both in his bantamweight and flyweight fights. He beat Sergio Pettis, who has been mentioned by us earlier. He had a 1-1 series with DJ. He TKO'd TJ Dillashaw, who's going to be much higher up on all of our lists. Yes, it was at 125, but it still counts for something. He then finished Marlon Moraes to become double champ, and he finished Dominic Cruz to defend it. So, as you all obviously agreed, he's got to be at least this high on the list. It's a very, very strong bantamweight resume for a guy who actually didn't spend much time there. And it's one that he may still add to. So we will see, but he is my number 7. And then number 6, I guess I viewed him in a better light than everyone here, which I was not quite expecting. Miguel Torres, the first ever king of the bantamweights for me when I became a fan of MMA. He ruled the bantamweight division for such a long time that it was silly. In the end, as you guys alluded to, the new breed did get him. Brian Bowles got him. Joseph Benavidez got him. Demetrius Johnson got him. Eventually a couple more as he got older. But the career he had prior to that stretch was way too impressive for me to ignore. We talk sometimes about the quality of competition in certain eras and how it's hard to figure out where guys should stack up. But when you win 37 out of 38 fights, it no longer matters to me. 37 out of 38 fights. And the one loss in the stretch was a decision that he then avenged with an armbar. So you could really say that through his first 38 fights of his life, no 135-pound human showed they were better than Miguel Torres. That's fucking silly. And he had 31 finishes in those 38 fights. So it was a string of dominance like few we have ever seen. It's not like there weren't names on there either. There were plenty of names of his day. Charlie Valencia, Antonio Benuelos, Mitsugaki, as Mike said, Tapia, Beeb, Maeda, and plenty of others. He was the long-reigning bantamweight king. Before that division truly got its proper due, he was kind of the king right as it really came onto the radar, but it was already toward the end of his run. He was already, as I just said, almost 40 fights into a career. So how much can I really knock him for losing fights when he's an old man already who's 40 fights in? So I feel like it's only fair to have him this high on the list, and it's an absurd resume.
Yeah, man. Whew. Okay, intermission. Here we go. 10 through 6. Okay, a lot of names have been popping up. As expected, there is not that much similarities between our lists so far.
Yeah, they're about as wild as I figured they would be.
So I have a confession. I somehow fucked up on my list and made Henry Cejudo both number 4 and number 6.
Dude, I knew you fucked up.
So
I knew you did. I was like, who
Fix it.
could be in this top 5?
You gotta fix
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Just fix it. Just pick somebody.
Okay.
But now I don't even know where the fuck I meant to put Henry Cejudo now.
Well, look
Well,
at
you
your
put him
number
at
5 and decide if he's better or worse.
Yeah, well, we'll figure it out. We'll go.
Well, wait, because we got to figure out who your actual 10 was then. So who would be on your list? Who was your number one
Faber
honor?
was his 10. Faber was his 10.
No, I'm
Yeah.
saying who would be now? Because Faber's 9.
I don't know.
I guess
I don't
so.
know. I have to look at some shit here.
Wait, why?
gonna do some
hold on,
multitasking.
hold on. Why are you saying Faber's 9?
Faber
Who?
is 10.
I just have to figure out who the hell was supposed to be number 6.
Yeah, who was supposed to be number 6?
Yeah, I don't know.
What do you
Or
mean
who was supposed to be
number
number?
6?
You said 4?
He has 9 guys on his list by accident instead of 10. So whoever he had at
But I
11
have-
was supposed to be his number 10.
They're all moving up. I
No,
guess.
Henry Cejudo was number 4 and number 6, so I put him in 2 different spots.
Right. So who was supposed to be in one of those spots?
Right, I don't know.
From your
Oh, you
honorables?
mean one of those spots was supposed to be someone else? I thought you just
Yeah.
meant everyone was supposed to move up and 11 was
No.
actually 10.
Tell you
No,
what.
no.
Tell you what. We'll go round robin. So Mark will continue with his top 5. Then I'll do my top 5.
You are
And
a
then you'll-
catastrophe.
And then
I
so
know.
you have time to
fucking
do some homework there in the background.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so I'm going to continue.
Continue on round robin style.
All right, so as I hop into the 10, I always like to do the real fast recap. My 10 was Jan, then I went Benavidez, then DJ, then Cejudo, and then Miguel Torres at number 6. So as I move into my top 5, I started off with maybe the all-time king of being second best. Here he ends up 5th best, the California kid, Uriah Faber. Of course, he fought at 2 different weights for different stretches of his career, both 135 and 145, and he had a ton of success at both. But through almost all of it, he was second best for the most part. Obviously, he did get the title at 145 in WEC, but then he couldn't beat Mike Brown a couple times. At 145, couldn't beat Jose Aldo at 145, and then came Dominic Cruz. Dom got him 2 out of 3. But he also did tap Dom in one of them, which counts for a whole lot in my eyes. No one else beat Dom in any fashion until he was over 10 years into his career. And to me, that's a huge feather into Uriah Faber's cap. But if we're talking about bantamweight, which we are, up until the very end when he got bested by Jimmy Rivera and Piotr Jan, no one beat Uriah Faber in that weight class besides Dominic Cruz or Renan Barão. That's it. He beat every other bantamweight there was until he got old. He has, I guess, the 3rd longest resume in terms of wins on my list, behind Torres and the men I'll get to next. But he has the longest resume in terms of truly quality wins, longer than anyone I've ranked ahead of him as well. I don't need to list them all here. You can go look them up. But there are endless respectable names and guys that we've mentioned tonight on his list of wins. You'll find just a few examples. Bibiano Fernandez, Cruz, as I just said, bigger guys like Jens Pulver, Asuncao, Mitsugaki, Bowles, McDonald, and plenty more. He has beaten so many relevant dudes. As I said, I won't list them all, so I guess I'll stop there. And as you guys touched on, he was largely responsible for the explosion in popularity of the WEC and for the legitimization of the sub 155-pound weight classes. There was a period of time where he put those weight classes on his back and thrust them into the mainstream, being the marketable star that he was. And he plays a huge role in the history of MMA from that regard. So he makes it into my top 5. Moving along, the man I just mentioned who was able to best Uriah Faber twice, the man with one of the weirdest-ass resumes of all, the Baron Renan Barão. He lost the first fight of his career, and he then went unbeaten for 33 straight fights, 22 of them being finishes. He was almost like the new age Miguel Torres. The list of names maybe wasn't quite as established because there was a lot of them on the Brazilian circuit before he really broke through. But still, it was a crazy run, and it culminated in 2012 when he beat Uriah Faber by decision to become the interim UFC Bantamweight champion. From there, he got promoted to undisputed champ. He choked out Michael McDonald. He finished Eddie Wineland, and then he defended against Faber, who he finished in the first round. And then it all went bad. He lost 8 of his next 10 fights. 8 of 10. He just fell off a cliff. It started with, obviously, TJ finishing him in a legendary upset. He won 1 fight and got his rematch, only to be finished again. And then he pretty much could never win a fight from that point on. They fed him Felipe Nover at one point, who was absolutely no one, just to get him a win. But aside from that, it was all over. We've never seen him win again. And we're not talking all studs here. I mean, Brian Kelleher, Andre Ewell, Luke Sanders. So it's one of the oddest career collapses that there ever was. TJ Dillashaw just absolutely broke this man. So it did feel a little weird to rank him because of that, but the initial run was so good and dominant, and for prime Renan Barão to beat prime Uriah Faber twice the way he did, I felt like I couldn't put him any lower on my list. So he is number 4, and I'm assuming he must have made it into your guys' top 5s as well if we haven't heard his name yet. So we're probably all on approximately the same page. Number 3, TJ Dillashaw. It was hard for me to rank TJ and Aljo. I think their resumes are actually very comparable. It would have been much easier if Aljo had defeated a healthy TJ and not an injured TJ, which kind of makes that fight a weird one. But in the end, I did still end up having TJ slot in at number 3. He has 5 losses to Aljo's 3 losses. He's been finished 3 times. Aljo's only been finished 1. And I feel like Aljo had more quality wins. So TJ did end up at number 3. With all that said, I think he is firmly number 3 and no lower. He took out Renan Barão, back-to-back fights, as I said, legendary fights. He did then lose his belt to Dominic Cruz in a really close split decision, but he bounced back and beat 2 guys with all-time resumes in Assunção and Lineker. And then he took out the next killer. The next guy in Cody Garbrandt, who had beaten Dominic Cruz and everyone thought was going to be the man going forward. TJ finished him twice, and he broke him just like he broke Renan Barão. So, and not to mention he added a win over Corey Sandhagen for good measure. So it's a hell of a resume. Yes, he popped. Yes, that hurts probably his all-time case. I didn't know how to factor that in, and I decided to just rank him on resume alone. So he's a 2-time UFC champion, one of 3 who have done that, who happen to be my top 3. And his body of work deserves this spot. So he is my number 3. Number 2, the current reigning, defending bantamweight king, and a man who is pushing for that top all-time spot, Aljamain Sterling. And I'll tell you what, as much as I debated him and TJ, I also debated then him and Dom. And I'll tell you the main reason why. Aljo has been truly and clearly beaten 1 single time. Marlon Moraes put his lights out. His other 2 losses were very close split decisions to Brian Caraway and Rafael Assunção, whereas Cruz has been finished a few times. But we'll get to Cruz. He did. I did decide the resume was too much, but Aljo's a guy who's demanding his respect at this point, and a lot of fans seemingly still don't want to give it. But he has now beaten Henry Cejudo, T.J. Dillashaw, Petr Yan, Corey Sandhagen, Pedro Munoz, Jimmy Rivera, and even throwing a Renan Barão for good measure, and the list goes on. And he gets finishes too, more than Dominic Cruz even gets. To be fair, he choked out Sandhagen. He knee-barred Cody Stamann. He just finished TJ. Granted, he was hurt. But his bantamweight resume has become truly elite now, and he can still add to it. He's going to fight O'Malley soon. We'll see if he leaves the division or not, but it's tough to not deny Aljamain Sterling, in my opinion. And then number 1, I am curious if he'll be number 1 for all of us, Dominic Cruz. He certainly has some people nipping at his heels over the years. Some solid resumes behind him. It wasn't quite as clear as DJ being the number 1 flyweight. But I do still think that the GOAT spot at bantamweight belongs to Dominic Cruz. After losing for the first time in his career in 2007 to Uriah Faber, at featherweight, mind you, he dropped down to bantamweight, made his debut in the weight class on June 1st, 2008, and from that date until December of 2016, he never lost a fight. Now, he wasn't the most active guy in the world. It's only 12 fights in those 8 years, as we know. But the list of names and titles is enough to make him the GOAT. He dropped down. He beat Valencia. Then he beat McCall. Then Ivan Lopez and Benavidez. Then he fights for the WEC Bantamweight title in a fight with Brian Bowles, becomes the champ. He defends it against Joe Benavidez and Scott Jorgensen, becomes the UFC champ, defends it winning a rematch against Uriah Faber, beats Mighty Mouse, comes back from a terrible injury to knock out Mitsugaki, takes his belt back from TJ Dillashaw, defends it against Faber again to conclude and win that trilogy. It's just, and then he finally got beat, of course, for the first time ever at 135 pounds in his whole career by Cody Garbrandt. And he's only 2-2 since that time, but he is still a top 10 bantamweight today. And that run, those names, that he was WEC champ, 2-time UFC champ, in my opinion, you can't deny that he deserves the number one spot on this list.
Mark's bantamweight GOAT, Dominic the Dominator Cruz. What a run, what a run.
So I've decided to simply remove Henry Cejudo from my number 6 spot, and I moved up Corey Sandhagen. So Corey Sandhagen's now number 10.
That's what I figured you intended to do.
It's
Okay.
fucking horse shit.
So Cejudo's actually your 4 then?
Yes. He's
So
my
there's
number
someone you
4.
didn't say yet that is behind him?
Correct.
Gotcha.
I guess I'll go.
Go ahead,
we
keep
could-
going.
We
Yeah,
could end this madness here. My number 5 is Renan Barão.
Wow.
This one really bugged me out because my initial reaction, if we're being wholly honest, when I first started thinking about this list and writing it down, he was an honorable mention because because I know what his accolades were when he was on fire, but the fall off was one of the craziest fucking things I've ever seen in my life. And I had to check like twice about where USADA started testing and where his fall off really started to happen.
Yeah, people always threw that theory out there.
Dude, because it's a night and day difference. The man went from wrecking people left and right and good people when he got into the UFC. This is not like he was just wrecking cans, because a lot of the 30 wins, if you go back in his career, kind of like with Glover, a lot of his earlier wins aren't necessarily the guys with, heavy resumes or anything like that, but they're still bodies. It's still work, right? It still means something. But even when Renan Barão got into the UFC, he was wrecking motherfuckers left and right, and he wasn't losing. And then he ran into TJ Dillashaw, who at the time, no one expected him to really win that fight because he had never really shown us anything that would even resemble a way or a path to victory against Renan Barão. And then TJ comes out like a fucking superhero and beats the whole shit out of Renan Barão, breaks his face in I think it was the first round. Renan Barão didn't know what to do for the rest of that fight until he got wrecked. Some more, I should say. So from that point on, I don't know if it was a USADA thing. I don't know if it was the fear of God. I don't know what it was. But Renan Barão was never the same again. He left that octagon with a piece of himself missing. And he went really way downhill from there. And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't he supposed to be on Tauda before Tauda went belly up?
That is correct.
Yeah. And he hasn't had a fight since. So, you had a promotion seemingly trying to capitalize on a big name for better or worse.
Yeah.
And no one else wants to touch him with a 10-foot pole, it looks like. Or maybe he just got out of the game entirely because of all of that back and forth. Because from what I remember, that whole Tauda business, especially once we got into the pandemic and shit, it got pretty messy from what I remember. So
For Tauda?
yeah.
Oh, yeah. They were trying to, because, they were a big company coming out of Brazil. They're all Brazilian guys. So they had the Brazil connection. So they were, quote unquote, signing all of these fading stars.
Sure.
In MMA. They had the big three that they signed. Again, in big air quotes, the word signed. They had
Bigfoot was one of them.
Renan Barão, Bigfoot Silva,
Yeah.
and Polaris.
Right.
And
I'm like, who the fuck is Paul Harris?
Polaris. What is so funny?
Because people call him Paul Harris because it's Husamar Paul Harris. So when I hear Paul Harris, I hear Paul Harris, and it just made me laugh. I haven't heard that name in so long.
I did always enjoy people calling him Paul Harris.
Paul
For
Harris.
Made me chuckle.
Polaris.
How's
Okay.
that cheating, son of a bitch?
No,
doing?
like they would write it, Mike, as first name Paul, last name Harris.
No way. Like
No,
That's
early
what I'm
in the
saying.
career?
That's
Like as a funny nickname.
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Paul Harris.
Because Polaris sounds like Paul Harris.
Sure.
I do wonder
Anyhow.
what that man is up to. I wonder if his ban is over. He got banned from something somewhere. They're not letting him play because he can't let go of people's legs when he has them. So,
Yeah. Anyway. Okay.
all right, who's next? Should I go
You
next?
tell me. Yeah, keep going.
You're still going.
Oh, right, I'm still going. It's still
You
my
just did
turn.
Barao, right?
That's right. I did do Barao.
Okay.
So yeah. So anyway, like Mark talked about, and it seems like I'm harping on this one a little bit longer than I meant to, but the resume from Renan Barao going into that catastrophe of the third act of his career is still very strong and still something that you can't ignore. And so, with great difficulty, I put Renan Barao at number 5. Number 4 is Henry Cejudo. I'm not going to recap any of that.
I thought you were about to. I was like, dude, you already did it.
Nope. But we are going to edit it just to say that Henry Cejudo is number 4.
Number 4,
if
baby.
you didn't hear my number 6, I'm not sure how you ended up in this clip in this moment, but you should go back and listen to what I said about Henry Cejudo because it still applies. My number 3 is TJ Dillashaw. And I wanted, there was a part of me that wanted to be petty about TJ Dillashaw because he popped and egregiously popped and popped with like a straight face.
Yeah.
And it really bugs me out to put some of these guys on the all-time list when they've popped. And I kind of went back and forth in my head because we don't know if he'd been using before and things like that. But I kind of narrowed it down and I got to a point where I was like, he officially popped during this fight with this substance. I can't lean on the what ifs or the whether he did when there's no real evidence to support it, right? We're always going to have kind of the thought processes or the wonders and whatever else about what he might have done in the past. But the reality is he never popped for anything. So I can't really hold it against him during a time where he was still elite and he popped towards the later half of his career, where I don't even really think, I don't think the end of his career really diminishes the successes and the accolades that he had prior to it. So TJ Dillashaw is a monster. Even if you take away his accolades, if you were to see that man fight just skill for skill, he's disgusting. His stand-up is one of the best in the game. Is very unique. I think he's the only guy to really use Bang Muay Thai to the most elite level. Fucking Bang Ludwig didn't even use Bang Muay Thai as good as TJ Dillashaw has used it. You know what I mean?
I know what you're saying, yeah.
TJ Dillashaw at this point might have even evolved Bang Muay Thai. I don't even know if you really want to call it Bang Muay Thai at this point because he's really taken it into his own. He's made, he's made a style that is very difficult to emulate and therefore very difficult to fight against and train against and get guys to give you looks based on it. A lot of footwork, a lot of movement, a lot of angles, a lot of combos. He's a fantastic fighter. I just wish we didn't have to deal with the popping bullshit, really. So he's my number 3. Number 2, and I think this is where we're probably going to get pretty similar, these top 3 guys here. Number 2 is Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling is, just like Mark said, nipping at the heels, is continuing to collect those accolades, is now defended his belt. And at this point, the reality is there's not a ton of guys in the bantamweight division who have defended their belt multiple times. Dominic Cruz is the one that you really have to beat for that record, I think. Do they defend it? No, yeah. I couldn't remember. Well, not really. If we're not including WEC, maybe not so much. I think the injury really fucked him.
Because the injury, but he never lost it technically.
Right. If we want to talk about lineal up until a certain point,
Right.
It was still Dominic Cruz.
Right.
But the injuries really plagued him for a while. He was, when you think about inactivity in the sport of MMA, I think Dominic Cruz would be one of the guys that would come to your head almost immediately. But up until a certain point, he was very active, especially in the WEC. Once he got to the UFC, things like his plantar fasciitis was something that kind of plagued him, but was never really something I think that put him out, which is something that always felt messed up, I think, in his body. But it was really his ligaments in his groin and his legs that really screwed him. And he needed a couple of replacements in his tendons. He tried cadaver stuff. That didn't work. Then he had to go through another surgery that they took part of himself out and reconstructed it that way, which took longer to heal. So there was a literal 3 or 4 year, 3 year looks like, gap in a certain part of his career. And then after he won the Mitsugaki fight, the fucking guy got injured again. And then he had to take another couple of years off, and then came back to beat T.J. Dillashaw, Uriah Faber, and then went on to lose the Cody Garbrandt fight, and we've gone from there. But even now, like Dominic Cruz has lost to Marlon Vera, but he was winning that fight up until he got caught. He beat Pedro Munoz, who we now know Pedro Munoz is still a dude in that division, very, very good in that division. He beat Casey Kenny, which is a good fight to come back from after 2 losses, but he still got the job done. And he lost to Henry Cejudo and Cody Garbrandt, who, again, are arguably, guys that are known to be a problem. Cody Garbrandt, I guess, at this point, not so much. But that was, I think, a unique stylistic matchup that worked out in Cody Garbrandt's favor. So, yeah. Dominic Cruz is that dude. He is number 1.
Mike, finish us off.
Okay. Where am I here? My number 5 is a guy who you guys might have caught that I did not mention his name in my honorables, and I did not mention his name in my 10 through 6, and that is Petr Yan.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I put him at my number 5 spot because he does have some UFC gold to his name, but also skill for skill. This guy might be the best out of all the names that we've mentioned on this list, save Demetrius Johnson. In terms of 135ers who, in terms of the eye test, who are just tremendous and who strike fear in my heart and I have nightmares about them, it's Petr Yan. So that's why, in terms of just the eye test, he's just one of the best ever, man. Even though he hasn't even hung him up yet, I rank him very highly, clearly. My number 4 is Renan Barão. Would have been higher had the latter half of his career gone the way that it has gone, with a lot of red on his record there. But the guy's a legend. He just is. He has the win streak that we've already alluded to coming into the UFC. He beat the brakes off of a few other legends on his way to his 2 legendary fights with T.J. Dillashaw, both of which did not go his ways. Unfortunately, those are probably the 2 biggest fights that he's known for, especially the first one. But his legendary status has cemented him for me in my top 5. Barão will always be probably on the Mount Rushmore of bantamweight, if you want to sort of dip your toe into that conversation. My number 3 is Aljamain Sterling, who already, don't look now, Aljamain Sterling is mounting quite the resume at 135 pounds with however many title shots he has now, title defenses he has now.
3.
And he has beaten a who's who at bantamweight. Not just fought a who's who, he has beaten a who's who. Mark, I loved your point about he's only really been beaten soundly by one guy, and that's Marlon Moraes. Otherwise, he's a tough out, man. You're just not beating Aljamain Sterling right now. My number 2 is a guy that Aljo beat. I have TJ at my number 2. You guys both had him at 3. This might just be some fan points coming in, but TJ Dillashaw, when he was on his run and when he came out against Renan Barão in that first fight, he turned me into a huge fan, man. I was a giant fan of TJ Dillashaw. Just that fighting style that he found with Bang Ludwig, man. Some of the most beautiful mixed martial arts on display that you will ever see. I don't care about the popping. I mean, listen, I care about the popping. It broke my heart. It broke my heart. I was like, dude, that's my guy. And it wasn't like he didn't dispute it. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Like, alluding to what Omar said, like, he popped with a straight face. He was like, damn, yes, I did it.
Yep.
Would it have been better or worse if he was like, I didn't do it, it was a tainted whey protein that I got from GNC? I don't know. I guess I'll have to think about that more. And surprise, surprise, we are unanimous. Dominic Cruz, number 1. I don't know what else to say that you guys haven't said. He is the clear GOAT right now at 135 pounds. The run that he went on. We will see. We will see how close Aljamain Sterling can get, though. What do you guys think? You think Alja's going to creep up to that number one spot?
It seems like he might only have one more bantamweight fight, so
No.
even if he beats O'Malley, he's not jumping Cruz for me, so I think he'd be stuck at number 2.
You know, I would argue that he might. I mean, if Cruz never wins another gold belt again at 135, at this point, if Aljamain Sterling wins one more fight, even considering the UFC titles that Dominic Cruz won early in his career, and the second time he won a UFC belt, he would still have more title defenses than Dominic Cruz at 135.
Yeah.
No, he would not. More total title defenses?
No.
Not including WEC.
No, wait.
If we're just... What do you mean? Dominic Cruz defended his UFC belt against Uriah Faber and Scott Jorgensen and Demetrius Johnson.
No,
right?
not Jorgensen. That was WEC.
Sorry, that's when he won. That's when he won the UFC belt. Technically,
he defended against Faber,
Uriah Faber, and Demetrius Johnson. Right. Then the Mizugaki was a return, so that's not a title defense. Then he won the belt against.
You're saying more defenses.
Defenses, yes.
I'm saying more title fight victories. We're not saying that. Yeah, you're
right.
So fair. Cruz would still have more title fight victories.
Sure, but he has 3 title defenses. Yeah. And so does Aljo right now. So as far as defenses are concerned, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So if he wins one more, I mean, there's an argument to be made there that the title defenses... I mean, I think the record for the most title defenses right now at bantamweight is 3. So Aljo might be able to beat that.
Okay.
Oh, and the Jorgensen fight is not even a UFC fight, even though it was a UFC title.
Because that was when they folded it in. So it was kind of like how they did the Pettis... Yeah.
Oh, so he only has 4 UFC title fight victories then.
Yeah.
I was saying 5. It's not even 5. It's 4. Wow. Fuck. So yeah.
Yeah.
Sterling wins the next fight. They have the same amount of title fight victories.
And they didn't do it with some of the other guys like
the DQ.
They didn't do it with Pettis in them because there was already lightweight in UFC. So they just folded the division that wasn't there into. So
crazy. All right. Fair enough. Good point. I take it back.
Okay. Did we do it?
All right.
Mike, did you go?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, he just finished. So, Omar, let's clarify. So, Sandhagen is your 10. I remember you mentioned Garbrandt in your honorables. You mentioned Torres in your honorables. Sandhagen is above those guys for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, he is your 10. So, let's... Yeah. So, I'll try to average this out as we do the rest of the... Or should I try to do it right now to share it with the people? So, give me... If you had to say 11 and 12 on your list, who would it be?
It would probably be...
Just so I have math to work with here.
I would say it would probably be Garbrandt, Moraes, Assunção, and then Torres.
Okay. And Mike, if you had to say you're like 11, 12, or however far you want to go.
11.
I don't remember who they were.
Marlon.
Marlon 12, was 11?
Joe B.
Wait, I'm sorry. Marlon was 11?
Mm-hmm.
And then who was it?
Joe B.
Okay. And then was that all you said?
I also said Jimmy Rivera and Brian Bowles.
Okay. Well, they weren't on anyone else's list, so they're not going to matter anyway. Okay. All right, so should I try to do math right now, or should I just do it as the show goes on?
Well,
do it as the show goes.
We have some MMA Sphere here.
Dude, go into the Sphere right now.
And then I can comment on the YouTube video with what our consensus ranks was.
Okay. There we go. All right. So a beautiful segue there into the MMA Sphere. Smooth as ever in this bitch. So we got a couple of little quick headlines. Nothing really major here. Just a couple of updates. And then some fight announcements. And then we can move right along into previewing this weekend's card. So we talked last week about Mackenzie Dern and kind of the battles that she's been going through in her personal life involving her divorce and how it was getting kind of messy with the money and all this other kind of stuff. So there's been some more information about what has come about that situation. It sounds like Mackenzie Dern is now being ordered to pay $4,000 a month plus $10,000 in court fees to her husband, or ex-husband, I should say.
Damn.
So that's fucking balls.
She's got to pay him $50K a year.
Man, that boy needs to get a job is what he needs. I don't know, but
What'd you
if
say?
she's
You said
taking care of the
$4,000 a
kid
month
full
and what
time
else?
and $10,000 in court fees,
That's one time, 10 grand in court fees.
I believe so. The
So
four
he
grand
kind
is
of,
what's.
It sounds like he kind of won.
It does, doesn't it?
Or
And I
maybe
think
he
it's because
won
she
more.
makes. But I think the way it works, especially in America, is that because Mackenzie Dern makes more money, she's the one that has to end up paying alimony. I believe is how that works.
Sure.
I think
that
it's
makes
all
sense.
nonsense. I don't think it makes sense at all.
Nobody
I think
should
that
get
motherfucker needs to
alimony
get.
ever.
He needs to get a job. I think there are situations. I think. Well, we don't need to get into this. I think there are situations where it does make sense. I think in most situations, especially when both of them had fucking careers before they got together, I think he's fine. I think he needs to figure it the fuck out. He was a professional surfer. I think he needs to professionally fucking surf and get a paycheck and stop bothering people.
I can't believe that. I can't even imagine. Like, how could you look at yourself in the face every time you get that check every month?
Bro, because people are petty, dog. People are petty. People want to be like, you wouldn't have made this kind of success without me if I wasn't watching the kid and
Right.
and this, that, and the other.
That's the
Like
argument. I get
people are petty, bro. And I don't know. To me, I can't imagine like siphoning money like that from people.
Right.
It just I
$4
don't know.
grand a month for how long? There's got to be an end, right?
I don't think there is, dog. I think that's just how it is.
For the rest
Maybe
of his
maybe when the kid turns 18, because I don't think it's child support, but I don't know if there's. I don't know. I don't know how that works. I think it's bullshit anyway.
How much was it a month? I'm busy doing this math.
$4 grand. This man is making like.
Fuck.
This man is making
He's making-
$70K a year.
No, that's not 70K.
$4 grand a month?
Oh, $4
Oh,
grand
no.
a month? That's
$4 grand a month?
$48,000 a year.
That's after taxes. $70K after taxes. Or before taxes, I should say. So yeah, I guess it's like what? Like 50 grand?
What?
$4 grand a month is 48K. There's only 12
48K.
months in a year. What math?
Yeah.
But do you
I'm talking
mean-
about that's what you make net if you make $70K a year.
Oh,
I see.
After benefits
Although I
and
wonder,
taxes and
is are alimony payments taxed as income? Like, is
I
tax
feel
taken
like
out?
not.
You think no? I think yes.
Really?
My brother's a tax attorney. I need to text him right now.
You should find that out. But yeah, it's we're in a situation here where Mackenzie Dern is, as far as I'm concerned, is kind of getting shafted here. I think Homeboy is fully capable of providing a living for himself without having to siphon money from his ex-wife because I don't know, because they don't want to work together. It sounds like he was abusive in a lot of situations, and she just needed to get out of that situation. She tried to make it work for a while. She had talked about with Ariel. And then she kind of thought about her daughter and how she didn't want her daughter growing up around that stuff and thinking that shit was okay and all this stuff. So,
man.
you know, it's a little bit of a shame that this is where it's at in that situation. Hopefully something a little bit more fair, at least in my opinion, goes down, but that is what it is for right now. Next on the list, I don't know if you guys saw this. I think we might have shared it in a group with each other, but bro, Israel Adesanya is living a life right now that is just not normal. As this man parades around the world having fun and, you know, enjoying different parties and meeting different people and then living the champ life and that kind of stuff, randomly bumps into his arch nemesis, Alex Pineda, some shit straight out of a movie. You can't write things like this because it would be cheesy. And yet, this happened completely spontaneously on its own. And I mean, when you want to talk about making a fight that has no business being made again, keeping that fire lit somehow after the fact, even when Pineda has an entirely different fight lined up, even as Izzy is set to probably fight the winner of Whittaker Duplessis, we still have the embers burning for Pineda Izzy 3, just based off of their social media bullshit. Izzy also going to play with the rugby team, right? I think he went to go train or play with the rugby team in Australia or New Zealand or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then Pineda goes and trains with the rival team of the team that Izzy went to go train with.
Yeah.
This shit is amazing. This is one of the greatest things in MMA ridiculousness ever. I love every minute of it. If you guys aren't following this storyline, I definitely recommend that you do because it's pure gold.
I also love the dual Instagram stories that they both sent out with each
It's
other.
fantastic. And you got to love that they're both playing into it, right? Like they both know how much I think that fight would sell, especially if Alex gets things done in the 205-pound division, right? Izzy keeps getting things done in the 185-pound division. That is a fight that has to happen yet again. And if they keep the public interest, especially of the casuals, that Izzy has, like, he has casual rings all over him. These motherfuckers love him. And so if they keep keeping this fire stoked little by little, it's going to sell, and it's going to sell so big. And I'm here for it, man. I'm here for the nonsense. I think it's so much fun.
Other than, this is an interesting question you're kind of raising. Other than Conor and names that come to mind, other than Conor and Brock Lesnar, other like the next biggest fighter with casuals, stardom wise,
Sean O'Malley.
Izzy's way up there. O'Malley's way up there too.
I don't think O'Malley's bigger than Izzy. You do?
Not
now.
No, not bigger than Izzy. But I thought the question was who besides those guys.
Oh, I thought he said only besides Brock and Conor.
And Izzy. I thought that was who we were talking about.
Oh, is that what you said? I'm sorry.
But I'm like trying to think of how high up Izzy goes. Like Izzy's pretty popular with casuals.
Like
a lot of people know who he is. Guys are known.
I would think McGregor has to be number one, right? If Brock came back, I think everybody and their mother would come to see Brock. Yeah, but I think Izzy is a solid number 3, really.
I think that's probably. I mean,
Jones?
I was gonna say is Izzy bigger than Poirier, but he definitely is. That's not even
to sell pay-per-views. I would think so.
Yeah, that's not even a good question.
John Jones might be number 4 on that list.
Bones.
Yeah, don't see.
But Sean O'Malley, when we talk about casuals, as far as casuals are concerned, though, I would imagine Sean O'Malley's got to be right at the top of that heap. You know what I mean?
Usman's kind of big.
Yeah,
but yeah,
with casuals.
No,
I feel like everyone knows Usman. No,
really, Usman. Wow.
I mean, maybe if they know him from Black Panther or something, but I'm talking about dudes that don't watch MMA. Like,
you think more casuals know Sean O'Malley than Kamaru Usman?
I do.
100%.
Oh yeah,
100%. Sean O'Malley, first of all, does way more work for the casual lifestyle, right? The social media, the scrolling, and things like that. These are not guys that are going to MMA fighting to read articles or going to Bloody Elbow to look things up. These are guys that casually will find MMA on their feeds or whatever. And I think Sean O'Malley just pumps out way more content than Usman has ever pumped
Isn't
out.
O'Malley also like on Twitch and all that stuff?
Bro, he's on Twitch. He's branded on weed items, gentlemen. There are probably stoners at home right now puffing Sean O'Malley like shit, whether it's the King Palm stuff, his vape stuff. Like, Sean O'Malley is, from a business and, again, a casual perspective, I think he's leagues and bounds ahead of Usman, Leon, like all those guys.
Okay, let's get back on track.
Yeah, for Mike's, we're already longer than we told Mike the show would be. Real quick sidebar. I'm averaging this out, our top 10. There were 9 guys that clearly would be our top 9. The 10th is like 1,000 guys in the mix. Mike, I need to know, because me and Omar gave more people than you. We both gave like 14 people. Would Corey Sandhagen be your number like 13 or 14, or would he be much lower on your list? That's the only person I don't have a third person's opinion on.
I'd give it to him.
You think he would be like right there for you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
He's great. He's so good.
Now I need to do math for all these number 10 people to see who it actually would be.
Sure.
Okay, carry on.
All right. Next on my list, I have John Jones news. So we've all been waiting for John Jones versus Stipe, right? We were told that that might happen in sometime in July, right? Everybody speculated International Fight Week. Well, it's fucking May 31st, and that ain't happening. They've already announced pretty much the entire lineup for July 8th, and John Jones and Stipe are nowhere to be seen. Now, everybody's then speculating, well, it sounds like Conor might be getting the November pay-per-view, and so that would leave John Jones to get the December pay-per-view, like for the end of the year. And now the rumors hitting all the mills in the MMA world is that John Jones will, I know, I tried to save that one there. John Jones will no longer be fighting Stipe and will be fighting Sergey Pavlovich instead during UFC 293, which will be taking place in Australia. I don't know how true that is. I don't think anything is finalized or anything is close to being finalized, but it sounds like Stipe is still playing games, and that fight might not be happening. So,
other than the one place that reported that, I haven't seen anyone report that, so I don't know.
Right. It just considering where we are and how we don't have any information, and we've been talking about this fight for like the last 3 months, and Stipe's been talking shit, and John Jones has been talking shit, and we still don't know anything about anything. Yeah. It just doesn't seem like it's a great sign. And it's kind of the same thing for Conor and Chandler, right? Like, they're hyping all this up. They've got tough going on. And Conor did not fight Uriah Faber. So for him not to fight Chandler wouldn't be the biggest stretch in the world. So I'm just hoping we get all this figured out.
Well, he was never supposed to fight Uriah Faber.
I'm just saying him. I guess that is true. There wasn't a expectation, I guess, with the first.
Yeah, it was a weird, tough season. They knew going in they weren't booked to fight each other.
All right, next on the list we have a little update on Merab Dvalishvili. He is currently going to be sidelined for about 3 to 4 months. If you've seen him on social media, he has a whole cast on his arm. He ain't doing shit. Although he somehow found a way to flip and heel toss or hip toss a bunch of people with one arm. So that's wild. But yeah, he'll be out for a while, so I wouldn't expect him back in the mix until at least Q4 of this year, if not a little bit later than that. Last on my list of news, PFL strikes again. I don't know what is happening in PFL.
Me fucking neither.
But Rob Wilkinson has now officially popped for a quote-unquote banned substance. They have not revealed any information about this banned substance or any other information about a timely suspension. But he is pulled from the 2023 season of PFL. If this continues, there's not going to be a fucking 2023 season in PFL.
There might be a fucking PFL. I mean, you can't have the whole roster pop. Like, when your champion is popping, you're getting some issues. I mean, I know it's happened in the UFC too, but still.
If PFL is hooked up with USADA, you might just want to drop them motherfuckers, bro, and just let it happen, because right now it just seems like half of the last 2 cards are not going to be fighting for the next couple of years. So I don't know what's happening. Or at least, no, the last guys actually got like 6 months. They got something relatively short. So I guess we'll see what happens, man. But it's not a great look for PFL. They've got a lot of guys popping in a really short amount of time. So that's what we have there. And let's get into some fight announcements and some updates, and we will move right along. So just like we kind of alluded to, Guram Kutateladze is out against his fight with Jamie Mullarkey this weekend. Muhammad Naimov will be stepping in to fight Jamie Mullarkey. It will still be a lightweight bout. Vince Pichel is out against his fight with Benoit Saint-Denis. Saint-Denis will now be facing the Ismael Bonfim brother. That will be going down July 1st. Following that trajectory, Trevin Giles caught himself a fight with the other Bonfim brother, that is Gabriel Bonfim, and they will be fighting on UFC 291 on July 29th. Along with that fight, Joanne Wood versus Priscilla Cachoeira was also been added to the UFC 291 card on July 29th. Ode Osborne versus Asu Almabayev has been added to UFC's Nashville card on August 5th. And the last 2 updates I have are actually for the Ryzen Bellator updates. AJ McKee versus Patricky Pitbull will be fighting for the first ever... Oh no! I mixed some of these 2 up. My bad. Hold up.
Yeah, no.
AJ McKee.
That's in the Grand Prix.
Yeah, AJ McKee and Patricky Pitbull will be fighting though. Is it for a belt? Because now I wrote down this fucking information wrong.
No, it's in the first round of the Grand Prix.
Okay.
The winner fights Alexander Shabley.
Perfect. Okay.
In the semis.
I combined them with the following news, which is Kyoji Horiguchi will be taking on Makoto Shinryu Takahashi at 125 pounds now for the inaugural flyweight belt at Bellator, which they are opening up the 125-pound division. This will be the first Bellator flyweight champion, and it will be crowned at a Bellator Ryzen event in July. That is all the news we have for you this week.
Nice. Quick update from live update from tax attorney Rob Hansen. I asked, are alimony payments taxable income? He said they were, but not anymore. That changed in 2017. It used to be that alimony was income to the recipient and a deduction for the payer, but now it is neither income nor deduction. It's just money.
Thanks, Trump.
I mean, it
Is that a
should be
Trump
that
change?
way.
I guess it was.
Right? Like, if you owe someone money, you owe them money. It shouldn't be, it's not income.
Taxable.
Fucking people shouldn't be owing nobody money, bro. This is all ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Following the
ridiculous.
update from the tax attorney, update from the resident mathematician, I have a consensus top 10. So
I mean, he's the only one that works with numbers.
It shakes out as follows. Dom 1, Aljo 2, TJ 3, Barao 4, Cejudo 5, Faber 6, Jan 7, Torres 8, Garbrandt 9, 9, Sandhagen 10.
Oh, wow.
R.I.P. Pettis and Haraguchi.
Corey Sandhagen makes it into the our all-time top 10 bantamweights list.
Yeah.
Good for him.
So the two on my list that didn't make it consensus were DJ and Benavidez, which I get. The two on Omar's were Pettis and Horiguchi, which is honestly kind of same boat. A lot of their resumes are at flyweight. And then the one on Mike's that didn't make it was a Sunsao. Him and Moraes were like decimal points behind Sandhagen, but they were behind.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Well, we do, believe it or not, have some MMA to look forward to this weekend. UFC Fight Night, Cara France versus Albazi, going down Saturday, June 3rd at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, headlined by two premier flyweights being Kai Cara France and Amir Albazi. We're going to talk about 4 of these fights, boys. Before we do, any other fights or fighters that you guys want to spotlight for our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, I'll spotlight a couple of them. I'm sure Mark's going to want to touch on a couple of them as well, just really quickly. There's some decent names on this card as far as, to expect some decent performances, I think. But a lot of these fights just don't have any kind of real consequence to them as far as movement or things that are going to make any kind of change to the current state of things. But they should still be some decent fights. So I'll do just, I guess, 3 of them, and I'll let Mark. How many do you have, Mark?
I was going to touch on 3 of them quick.
So I'll touch on 2 of them. That way Mark can probably get one of them. That way, just in case we overlap, he gets one. So the 2 that I really have are going to be Philippe Lins versus Maxime Grishin. That's actually a really good fight. It's the first fight on the card.
I agree.
There's no, like I said, there's it's not a fight of consequence, but stylistically and from a skills perspective, that should be a really good fight to watch. And then you also have Damon Blackshear versus Luan Lacerda directly after that. That is also a really good fight from a technical perspective. Damon Blackshear, I think, is somebody who's a little bit, I think, underrated and kind of goes under the radar just a little bit. But either way, should be a really good fight, and I definitely think everybody should catch it.
Yeah, I agree. That Grishin Lins fight's a great opener. You might see a knockout there as well. I will highlight Daniel Santos, Willie Cat, who is kind of like Charles Oliveira 2.0. Not saying he's that good, but he's like a little bit. He trains with Charles, and he's very reminiscent of Charles when you watch him. So he's a fun guy to watch. He's fighting Johnny Munoz Jr. on this card. And then, actually, 2 more. I'll say Carini Silva is on this main card. We're only going to do 4 of these main card fights because it's a bit of a smaller card. But I'm super high on Carini Silva since before she debuted. Blew my expectations when she did debut, so I'm really excited to see her fight again. She's fighting Ketlin Souza. And then the one other main card fight that we're not going to do is Alizu Zaleski dos Santos, who I have always liked. He's coming back off a suspension. He popped for something, but then they shortened it because I guess it was one of these weird things. But he's coming back to fight Abubakar Nurmagomedov. That's kind of like, the wrestling control guy in Nurmagomedov against someone who's kind of all action in Zaleski. So I'm curious to see how that one shakes out. That should be another good one.
Yeah. We should also mention, even though we won't get crazy into it, Andre Arlovsky's on this card fighting Dontel Mays. Andre Arlovsky is an OG, regardless of what you think. So I'm always going to give Andre the shout out at the very least to make sure people are watching.
For sure.
Okay, here we go. Starting things off in the flyweight division, a flyweight bout between Tim Elliott and Victor Altamirano. Tim Elliott, the 36-year-old, fighting out of Missouri, 18-12 with 1 draw, coming off of a win back in March against Tagir Ulanbekov by decision. He will be standing across from Victor Altamirano, El Magnifico, fighting out of Fort Worth, Texas, 12-2 as a pro, 32 years old. riding back-to-back UFC wins over Daniel Da Silva and Vinicius Salvador. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick for Elliott versus Altamirano.
Okay, nice to be previewing fights again. Tim Elliott is a bit of a favorite at minus 180. Altamirano is plus 145 as the underdog. There's a 3.5-inch reach on the Altamirano side. He's the younger fighter. Only by 4 years, though. It kind of feels like it should be by more than that. But I just don't know if I've seen enough of a threat in a single area from Altamirano to pick him over Tim Elliott, because his thing is kind of that he's very well-rounded. But Tim Elliott's very well-rounded and has shown that time and time again. I know he's got a lot going on in his personal life right now, in his marriage, which definitely seems like it sucks. I don't know where his head is at exactly.
I didn't even want to blast him out. I didn't even want to blast him out on the MMA sphere. I didn't even want to do it to him because
yeah, it's a shitty spot for sure. Yeah. If you don't know, he is his wife cheated on him with another fighter. But
dude, it was his coach.
Yeah, correct.
It's fucking crazy, bro.
All right, we'll tell that it's Kevin Kroom, another UFC fighter. I don't know if he's even still in the UFC at this point.
No, he's bare knuckle now.
Okay. So because of that, I don't know that I want to say go ahead and risk money on Tim Elliott just because I don't know exactly where his head is at. But as far as a pick, I will take him. I think he can out-wrestle and out-scramble a guy in Altamirano who's also good in that department, but I just trust Elliott more. I think he can out-awkward him enough in the striking, and I think he'll take the card. So I'll say Elliott UD.
Omar, go. Fast-ish.
Yeah, man. I want to believe in Altamirano, but the reality is I don't really, just like Mark, I haven't really seen anything from him that makes me think that he can beat Tim Elliott in a specific area. Tim Elliott has shown his vulnerabilities in certain spots, but the reality is Tim Elliott tends to lose to some of the really good guys. And I just don't think that Altamirano is at that level yet. If he proves us wrong, then he proves us wrong, but there's no way that I can go in that direction with the information that I have. So I'm going to go with Tim Elliott here by unanimous decision.
We are unanimous. I also will take Tim Elliott by a UD. I think he's just a more tested veteran, and I like his well-rounded skill set. I'm going to take him by a UD. Let's go on to the lightweight division, a bout between Jim Miller and Jared Gordon. So we have Jim Miller at A10, fighting out of Sparta, New Jersey. Really needs no introduction to MMA diehards and purists out there. He is 35-17 as a pro. Add one no contest to that. Of his 35 wins, 19 have come by way of submission. Looking to get back in the win column after losing in a decision to Alexander Hernandez back in February. He will be standing across from Jared Flash Gordon, the 34-year-old out of Queens, New York, 19-6 and one no contest. 6 wins by knockout, coming off of a no contest against Bobby Green, in which Bobby Green torpedoed his skull into Jared Gordon's skull towards the end of that first round. I recall Bobby Green sort of looking good in that first round. Am I correct in my memory?
He could have looked better.
Yeah, it was actually kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
I think I remember
Gordon
thinking
looking
was
good?
looking good.
Gordon was landing a lot more. Bobby was seemingly trying to get his timing and his range down because Gordon was doing a lot of bobbing and weaving and throwing a lot of overhands and hooks and things like that to try to gauge or try to close the distance and use his shortness to his advantage. And I think it caught Bobby off guard early on. But as the round kind of went on, it seemed like he started to get his timing a little bit more. But the reality is Gordon won that first round pretty easily.
Oh, you think so? Yeah. I remember taking Bobby Green, thinking that was a bad matchup stylistically for Gordon, even though I'm a big fan of his. Omar, start us off. Give us your take of Jared Gordon versus Jim Miller now this Saturday night.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting fight. I think stylistically there's a lot of things to look forward to here. From a striking perspective, I think Jared Gordon is not the greatest striker in the world. I think he's effective. I think he's decent at what he does in putting his own game together. I think Jim Miller is just better, man. I think Jim Miller has seen a lot of different looks. I don't think there's anything unique or special about Jared Gordon's striking that makes me think that Jim Miller can't handle it, and also give himself a little bit of an advantage there with his own repertoire of weapons, especially his elbows. Jared Gordon's a guy that needs to kind of be inside with how short how short he is compared to some of the other guys. Even though this says he's 5'9", is he 5'9"?
Jared Gordon?
Yeah.
I feel like that's like around what I was imagining.
He looked a lot tinier against Bobby Green. Maybe I'm bugging, but Bobby Green I thought was like 5'10". They didn't seem 1 inch different, but maybe I'm
5'9" is what I see. I don't know.
Weird. Anyway, I think that Jim Miller is just a little bit better on the feet as well. I think he's got a little bit more versatility in the way that he approaches his stand-up and the comfortability there as well. And I think the reality is, man, is if Jared Gordon wants to try to take this fight to the ground at some point, I think he's kind of fucked there. Jim Miller is not that dude that you want to go down to the ground with, especially if you're not a guy who's like a Nurmagomedov or something like that, right? Like where you have this ridiculous control, this like Donkey Kong-ass energy and strength. If you're not that dude, I just can't see you overwhelming Jim Miller or putting Jim Miller in a place where he's uncomfortable on the ground. And the nice thing I like about Jim Miller is if at some point he feels like he can't get something, he won't necessarily spend an entire round on his back if he can avoid it. So I think this is tailor-made for Jim Miller, for being honest, man. I go with Jim Miller submission, round 2.
Mark?
So Gordon's almost 2-1 as the favorite. He is minus 185. Jim Miller is a plus 150 underdog. And I thought I'd be alone here, but I'm rolling with Jim Miller.
That's great value right there.
Yeah, I agree. You guys know this. I've never been so sold on Jared Gordon. I do think he's solid, but I've always felt like he's just that, a solid fighter who doesn't have what it takes to truly break through. I've always felt like when he gets an opponent who offers significant resistance, that he can struggle. And Jim Miller, as long in the tooth as he may be, is going to offer some fucking resistance because that's what Jim Miller does. He's almost 40 years old, and it doesn't matter. He still brings it every fight. He just brought it in his last fight in a scrap with Alexander Hernandez. Yes, it was a loss, but I didn't see anything there to make me think he can't hang with Jared Gordon. He had won 3 in a row prior to that. I know it's against a little bit of a lower level of competition than what Gordon has been fighting as of late. But I'm going with Jim Miller, man. I think he's the man in this fight who carries the danger, and I don't think Gordon's striking or grappling is good enough to pull away from Jim Miller enough to make that danger not matter. I think the bigger moments and bigger damage will come from Miller, and I think he scrapes out a competitive 29-28.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see holes in Jared Gordon's head by the end of this fight.
I'm going with Jared Gordon. I think. What's the spread again? What are the odds? Are they close?
Minus 185, Jared Gordon, plus 150, Jim Miller.
Okay. So odds-wise, those are not like super far apart, right?
No, it's like
it's not a pick 'em.
Favorite and fair underdog. It's not super close or super wide.
2-1 against Matt Brown against Jim Miller seems wild, but that is just me.
Yeah. I think this is a great fight stylistically. I think both guys are scrappers for sure. There's a little danger for Jared Gordon because Jim Miller, I think, is a bit more of an active fighter and a scrappier fighter, we could say. I think Jared Gordon is in the middle of a moment in his career. He had a nice 3-fight win streak. Then he got choked out by, Grant Dawson. Then he beat Leandro Santos. He beat Paddy Pimblett and then got fucking robbed on the scorecards. I know both of you guys saw that for Paddy, right? Miraculously.
I just didn't see it as a robbery. That fight was just
fucking robbery. I'm sorry.
That third round was stupid on both of their parts.
No, it's okay.
It was a fucking dumb third round.
Yeah, I saw it that way too. Not necessarily for Paddy. I saw it as 1-1 with the third round that was bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, and then he got headbutted by Bobby Green. So he might have been on another 3-fight win streak right now. We could have been saying that Jared Gordon has won his last 6 of his last 7, but that's not the place we find ourselves in. That being said, I think he rights the ship over Jim Miller in a very tough competitive fight, and I will take Jared Gordon by UD. Okay, co-main event, featherweight bout between Alex Caceres and Daniel Pineda. Caceres, Bruce Lee Roy, a favorite of many longtime tough watchers. tough viewers. 20-13 with 1 no contest, 7 subs. He's 34 years old, fighting out of Miami, Florida, coming off a win against Julian Erosa back in December by TKO. Standing across from Daniel the Pit Pineda, the 37-year-old fighting out of Houston, Texas, 28-14 with 3 no contests. Jesus, so many no contests for this guy. Also coming off a win against Tucker Lutz back in March. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick.
So really quick before you go into it, just to give you some context, his 2 no contests are to Mavlid Hayabulev and Jeremy Kennedy, also in PFL, by the way.
Yeah, it's when he popped.
Yeah. It's when he popped for a banned substance. I was just making the point that still PFL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he somehow went through 2 fights. Oh, because how did this happen?
They're on the same card. It was like a tournament night, and he beat them both, and then he popped, so they both became no contests.
I didn't know PFL was doing multiple fights a night.
Back at that time, yeah.
Holy shit. Okay. Well, yeah, so he popped for both of those fights, obviously, for the same substance. And then the last one was an eye poke that he did to, or that Andre Fili poked Pineda in the eye. Right. And so that fight was called no contest. So, sorry. Just wanted to give context there.
No, all good. So did you say me? Okay, similar odds to our last fight. Alex Caceres is the favorite. He is minus 180. Daniel Pineda is a plus 145 underdog. 3 inches of height and 3.5 inches of reach on the Caceres side. He's certainly the longer fighter. He's definitely the more proven fighter, at least in terms of in the UFC. But I'm pretty torn on this fight. And honestly, if it wasn't for that Andre Fili fight where Pineda kind of got worked, I think I'd be taking him confidently here, but that fight does give me pause because he really got stuck on the outside of Fili's punches and couldn't really track Fili down, and I could see Caceres somewhat replicate that here. He is bigger. He's longer. He's becoming better and more dangerous in his range striking all the time, as we've seen recently. But I still kind of feel like Pineda may not respect Caceres' power, which, again, it could be a mistake. We saw what Caceres just did to Julian Erosa, which was fucking beautiful. But I kind of think Pineda is just going to try to crash through range and turn this into a brawl with Alex Caceres. And from there, Caceres could certainly go to the grappling and try to hunt for a sub. He's slick as hell there, as we all know. But Pineda's no slouch there either, and he's the much more powerful athlete, I would say. So I'm actually going to roll with him here. I think there may be some hairy spots. I would be 0% surprised if Pineda got finished, but I'm going to say he wins 2 of these rounds pretty clearly. And he's never won a decision in his life, but Caceres is also really hard to finish himself, so I'm going to say 29-28 Pineda as my pick here. I'll go with back-to-back underdogs.
Omar.
I'll be honest, man, kind of in the same boat.
Wow.
Yeah, I love Alex Caceres. I had a hard time with this one because I wanted to look and kind of think about where their avenues of success would really be. And just like Mark said, Alex Caceres could definitely strike with Daniel Pineda, but I don't think he's ever going to put him in a position where he'll be finished, right? Pineda is a very tough dude. I think Julian Erosa got caught with something he didn't even see. And while that could obviously still happen, I just think that Pineda might be a little bit too slick for that in that realm. When it comes to the ground game, I think the ground game is what's going to work to his detriment because as good as Alex Caceres is on the ground, we know that he is also vulnerable on the ground as well. The real problem is I don't think he's afraid to go to the ground with anybody, and that is going to be for better or worse. So if it does go down to the ground, I have a feeling Daniel Pineda is going to be able to put something together down there because he is very slick. I would even argue he might be just a smidge slicker than Alex Caceres is. And I think Alex Caceres might be a little bit too inclined to play down there with him if it goes down there, and I think it will. So I'm going to go with Pineda by second round submission.
I completely agree. We are unanimous on the dog this time. And this is a tough matchup for Bruce Leroy. There's too much firepower coming from Pineda. I think Pineda gets him out of there in the third.
Wow.
Boom. I'll say
Poor
another
Caceres,
sub.
man.
Love Caceres.
I know, man. Me too.
Still wild to me that Pineda has never won a decision. It has to happen at some point.
Yeah, right. Okay, main event time. Kai Kara France taking on Amir Albazi, a big-time flyweight bout. Kai Kara France, don't blink, by the way, is his nickname. 30 years old, fighting out of Auckland, New Zealand. 24-10 with 1 no contest. 11 knockouts, 3 subs added to that. Looking to get back in the win column after losing to Brandon Moreno back in July of 2022. Standing across from Amir, the Prince Albazi, fighting out of Baghdad, Iraq. The 29-year-old he is. 16-1 as a pro with 9 subs, add 5 knockouts to that. He is on a 5-fight win streak as a professional, 4-0 in the UFC, most recently knocking out Alessandro Costa back in December. Mark, lead us off one more time. Give us your take and your pick.
All right, we have a dead pick'em for the main event. Both guys are minus 110.
Wow.
Pretty much the same size. Albazi's 1 inch taller. He has a 1.5 inch reach advantage. And he has looked legitimately fantastic through 4 fights in the UFC. He has looked good everywhere the fight goes. He's got a clear decision win. He's got a knockout win. He's got 2 sub wins. He's been great. But the level of competition has not been Kai Kara France. And Kai Kara France is very good and arguably still getting better. So it's hard for me to pull the trigger on Albazi as good as he has looked. It's another one of these bookings where it's like a guy kind of skipped a step. I wish I could have seen him against someone who's a little more in between who he has fought and Kara France. But as well-rounded as he is, Kai is a guy who went strike for strike with Brandon Moreno and who stuffed the takedowns of Askar Askarov. I don't think Amir Albazi is that good that he could succeed where those guys could not. Maybe he is, and we're going to learn that. But I think beating Kai at this point is a very big ask, and I'm going to say Kai turns him back. Plus, Kai will be pressuring. He always is, which will be an adjustment for Albazi because he's usually the one doing the pressuring. So we'll see how he reacts to that or if he can force Kai to be the one backing up. But it's 5 rounds. Kai has time to work. It's very hard to get Kai out of there. He'll have time to get comfortable, to get his timing down, and I think he can eventually catch Amir Albazi. So I will say a 4th round TKO for Kai Kara France.
Wow. Omar.
Yeah, like I don't hate it, man. And I think the one thing that I keep thinking about too is the camp that that Albazi comes out of in Extreme Couture, and you would think they would have a lot better wrestlers there in general, but that doesn't really seem to be the case. And like we talked about, man, Askar Askarov is a motherfucker, especially when it comes to the ground game and taking people down and controlling and that kind of grindy pace. And Kai Kara France handled him. And it is very difficult to think that Albazi is going to come with something that is different than what Kai Kara France, or better, I should say, better than what Kai Kara France has already been able to deal with. So I think Kai Kara France is such a good fighter. I think he's extremely well-rounded, and I think his ability to keep the fight where he needs it to be, I think makes him an extremely dangerous opponent. He's only lost to Moreno and to Royval in his UFC career. That should say everything right there. He has fought Cody Garbrandt. He's knocked out Cody Garbrandt. He's fought Askar Askarov. He's fought Rogerio Bontorin. He has fought guys that I think have had real value to their name. And I think this one realistically will be one that Albazi will learn from. And I think it's just Kai Kara France's time to kind of reign at the top for a little while. Obviously, probably not as champion, but kind of being the Joe B right now of the division. So I'm going to go with Kai Kara France here by unanimous decision.
Wow. I'm going to go with Amir Albazi here.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the guy who has such a tremendous record with 10 defeats on his record. That gives me a little pause for Kara France, although he is getting better and better and better. And I will certainly be rooting for Kai Kara France. But I'm going to roll with Albazi. I think Albazi gets a rare decision win on his record. He has an 87% finish rate, but I think he's going to not find the finish against a very tough Kara France, and he's going to get his hand raised and a decision win. And that does it, boys and girls,
Very nice.
for our preview.
Mike, it took longer than we told you it would. Bantamweights, I guess, were a little more detailed than flyweights.
I didn't tell you shit. I knew this was going to take 2 hours. Mark is the one who thinks always that we're going to go shorter
Every time.
than what every time.
Every
Not
single time.
once has
Not
this
once.
man been on point. We're
I mean,
always half hour over.
I used fair math. Bantamweights were just longer than flyweights. What do you want me to tell you?
Man could do
The
your
rest-
taxes with his
the rest
eyes
of it
closed.
was accurate.
Time management is not his forte.
We need a producer who's like on with us and
Oh,
like
well.
rushes us along.
We need a lot of little people
We
to
were
help us out
barely
here
over.
with
It's
little
an hour-
different things.
It's an hour 50. 20 minutes. You'll live.
Will he, though?
No
Will
trivia. Daddy's got to go to bed because Daddy's
Yeah.
feeling it.
Let's get out of here. We did it.
All right, boys. Enjoyed the fights this weekend, everybody. And we'll check it next week. Hey, let us know down below in the comments who is in your top 10 all-time MMA bantamweights. Let us know. That being
he?
said,
Yeah. Let's start some shit.
okay, bye. Peace.
Peace.